well, in order to set the setting, let me just tell everyone that we're in the offices of Allan Peiser today for the purposes of doing a interview for the Roots to Boots project. Today is the 13th of November, 2014. And I will start out by asking Allan to tell us a little bit about the background of your grandparents, where they came from in Europe or Eastern Europe, and how they wound up in South Africa to begin the family story.
Well, rather than me starting with my grandparents, let me start with my great-grandparents.
Oh, your great-grandparents, terrific.
My great-grandfather was born in Germany, and he immigrated to South Africa at the end of the 19th century. And he established a trading post in a small little town in the Cape. The town happened to be the train junction for all trains coming from Johannesburg down to Cape Town, so he started a trading post down there, and he had a salt mine. He was a very successful businessman. He had 6 kids. One of them died very young. Three girls and 2 boys. And my great-grandfather's business partner was an Afrikaner, a Boer. And at the time of the Boer War, in the end of the 19th century, 1899, 1900, he was interned by the British and accused of being a Boer sympathizer. So at that point in time, he sent his 3 girls, my grandmother and her 2 sisters, back to Germany. And his sons stayed in South Africa. So my grandmother moved back to Germany. She was born in South Africa. He was born in Germany. She was born in South Africa. She went back to Germany. And she lived in Germany and in Berlin. And she was married. And my dad was born with that marriage. And her husband was killed in the First World War. And he was fighting on the side of the Germans. And my father was without a father when he was 2 years old. So at that point in time, my grandmother remarried Philip Peiser. And they lived in Germany. My dad was an apprentice. He graduated high school, but he was an apprentice for a sewing machine company called Burkhardt. Was in Bielefeld, which is a small town in Germany. And this was in the early 1930s. And he had a little trouble with some of the Hitler Youth. Got into a fight with a few of the boys there, beat them up, and had to leave town in a hurry. So he left Germany in the mid-1930s and went back to South Africa, where he was working for his uncles. Second World War broke up, and he volunteered for the South African 8th Army. Volunteered, I guess, was conscripted, and was with the South African 8th Army in Egypt, Palestine, and Southern Italy. So then after the war, he went back to South Africa and lived there. My mother's story is a lot different, and in a sense, it's just a lot different. Her parents were in Frankfurt, Germany, and my grandparents. And she was in a Jewish day school in Frankfurt in 1938, which was really not a good time to be in a Jewish day school in Germany. So her elder sister and elder brother got visas to immigrate to South Africa. So they immigrated to South Africa in, I guess, the 1936, 1937 range. And they had visas to go there, as did her parents, but she was refused a visa by the South African government. For what reason, we're never quite clear. Quite possibly because she was Jewish. So at age 18, she actually, fortunately, got a visa to come to the United States. So she came to Chicago at 18 years old, and her parents and all her extended family were in South Africa. She came over here on her own and lived with an aunt and an uncle in Chicago. So she lived in Chicago. she was married, had 2 kids, my brothers, and her husband, who was a good 20 years older than she, died of a heart attack and left her with a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old with no money and no visible means of support. She was not able to graduate high school, so she had no education. So she was working in a candy store, and she was working cleaning people's homes, and then actually got to the point where it was unsustainable. So her sister brought her to South Africa in 1953.
With the children? Or?
With the children, my brothers. So she came to South Africa in 1953 and met my dad in 1953.
How did they meet?
They were introduced by a mutual friend. A friend of theirs, somebody in the German Jewish community, introduced them. So they were married shortly thereafter, 1953, end of 53.
What was your father doing as a profession at that time?
My father started off working for his uncles. He was selling salt, and then he had got crossways with his uncles because he felt that they had not treated him right. So he joined another fellow selling blankets. So he was traveling around South Africa selling blankets to what were then called the concession stores. On each one of the mines there was a retail store, and the owner of the store was granted a concession to sell goods to the mines. So, and it was a good business at that time. So he was traveling around working for Leo, somebody, I don't remember his name. And then he got to the point when he got married, my mother basically pushed him and said, "You've got to do something for yourself." So he then bought a business that was importing and wholesaling used overcoats. They built a coffee company. So he started that business and then developed that business. And then he bought another business, which was an engineering business, manufacturing pipe fittings and steel pipe that was used on the mines and used in plumbing at that point in time. And then he had another business which was doing sheet metal products, water tanks, and other sort of duct work. And he built that business up.
Okay, so I've got a bit of a follow-up question I wanted to ask about the brothers that came with your mom. What age, excuse me, what age were they when they came with your mother to South Africa?
6 and 3. So my mother's story is a real tragic story, but she obviously left her parents and came as an 18-year-old to Germany, to the States with no family. And in the space of a year and a half, she lost her father, her mother, her mother-in-law, and her husband. So she lost all kinds of familial support.
So at the time that what age was she when she actually married your father?
She was born in 1920, so she's about 33 years old. So then my dad adopted my 2 brothers, and you would never know that they're not my brothers. It was terrific.
And at the time that, at what point in the marriage were you born relative, you and your brother, you and the rest of the family, siblings born relative to these businesses that were developed?
I was born, I'm 11 years younger than my oldest brother, and 8 years younger than my older brother. So I'm the baby of the family. And my dad bought those businesses right around the end of the 1950s. So 1959, 1960 is when he bought those businesses.
And where in South Africa were you living?
Johannesburg.
Tell me about the Johannesburg community, about the community that you were living in, the schools that you attended. What was it like living there?
Well, it was a terrific childhood. I mean, I don't think terrific in the sense of the areas we lived in were predominantly Jewish. The kids in my classes were predominantly Jewish. Because the area that we lived in, Killarney, was probably one of the more affluent suburbs in South Africa than Johannesburg. Certainly Johannesburg. So the kids that I went to school with came from very affluent families. We were not at that point in time. We lived in an apartment. But they came from very affluent families. They were great kids, lots of good friends. There was a synagogue across the street from where we lived, which we did not go to because it was an Orthodox synagogue. We went to Reform. So it was a wonderful childhood. No fear of being kidnapped or hijacked. We'd walk around the neighborhoods at night with no fear. We'd hitchhike on a Saturday night to go out and meet friends, go to movies, visit girls, with no fear at all.
Were you in public school?
I was in public schools the whole way. Yeah.
Was your family Zionist in any way?
They were very supportive of Israel. We weren't particularly religious, although we did attend synagogue, and I went to Sunday schools, and I carried on my education past my bar mitzvah, which was unusual for those kids, at my dad's insistence. And yeah, they were very supportive of Israel. My dad used to work cards for what was then called the equivalent of what is now UJA. He would work cards. He was active on the board of the synagogue. He was in the military, so he was active with the military, the war veterans as well.
Did you belong to any Zionist youth groups?
I did not. I had many friends that were members that went to B'nai Akiva, and I've forgotten all the names, but I went to one camp that was part of the United Progressive Jewish camps. So I went to one summer camp when I was 15, but I was not active in any of the youth movements.
So once you finished high school, how did you choose your career, and how did you go about deciding where to go to college?
Well, I had chosen my career when I was 13 or 14 years old. I always knew I wanted to do accounting, because in South Africa at that point in time, the entry into the business community was through accounting. So there was no sort of MBA emphasis at that point in time. So I knew I wanted to go into business, and I felt accounting would be the best entree. Potentially a relationship and a marriage, and then have to uproot myself in the middle. So I made the decision to come to the United States and investigate colleges here, and complete my education here in the US.
So you came here as a single person?
Yes, I was 21 years old.
21. And so how did you decide where to come?
I came here with two other friends, and we went to New York, and I picked up some college applications in New York at NYU and Pace, and we went to California, we picked up some applications in LA, we went to Connecticut to look at University of Connecticut, picked up applications there. We came to Dallas, I looked at SMU, we went to Florida, picked up some applications there. So I just didn't know what the hell I was doing, just came and picked up a few college applications, knew nothing about the US system, and I applied to colleges here.
And where did you wind up going to school?
I applied to NYU as an undergrad because I wanted to finish my accounting degree there, but they rejected my application because I had a bachelor's degree. And they suggested at the time, why don't you apply to our MBA program? So I did apply to NYU's MBA program, I was accepted there. So I did my 2-year MBA at NYU.
And at what point did you meet your wife?
Well, in between the time that I emigrated to the States and started college in 1977, when I graduated in 79, my older brother John had emigrated to get to the States, to Dallas, with his wife and kids. So when I graduated, I chose to come down to Dallas, which was in 79. And I was working here in public accounting. And I volunteered, served as a volunteer at the Jewish Federation. They had a group called the Young Executive Breakfast Forum, which I think has been resurfaced. And it was basically a forum for young Jews involved in the business community to get together, meet and organize speakers. And as it happens, she was the professional from the Jewish Federation working on that committee.
And what did your wife name?
Janice Jacobson. So we met. She was working for the Federation at that time as a campaign associate. This was in 1984. So we met through that.
And were you going to school at NYU at the time?
No. I graduated from NYU in 79. So I came down here. I was working here for public accounting, and I worked for Neiman Marcus in their financial planning and budgeting group. And then I left there to start my own business.
So you and Janice were married at what point?
In 1986. Yeah.
And tell me about your family here.
We have 2 kids, 2 girls, that I'm very proud of. Rebecca is 25, Jackie is 22. Both of them went to Solomon Schechter Libyan Academy, graduated. Rebecca graduated and spent 2 years at Hockaday and was miserable at Hockaday. And she then went to Yavna, so she graduated from Yavna. My younger daughter Jackie went to Levine of Solomon Schechter, graduated there, and then went straight to Yavna. So both of them graduated from Yavna. Rebecca went to the University of Maryland, which is my wife's alma mater. And she graduated with a degree in English literature. And she is currently living in New York City, working for a company that manufactures children's furniture. She's doing some marketing and product management. Loves it. My younger daughter Jackie went to Goucher University, which is also in suburban Baltimore. It's a small liberal arts school. Very different career path. University of Maryland's a public school, big school. The largest student Jewish population of any college in the country, if you get it in absolute numbers. And she chose it because I think my wife had an influence. And then Jackie went to Baltimore. She wanted a smaller college experience, which was great for her. She graduated last year, 2013, with a degree in history and women's studies. And she's currently enrolled in a Masters of Journalism program at Columbia University. So both kids are in New York City.
Do you still have family left in South Africa?
Yeah, I lost my mom 2 months ago. She died in September of 94. I have a brother and sister-in-law who live in South Africa, and they have 1 kid there who has 4 kids of her own. And then, and then I've got some cousins over there as well. So,
do you ever regret having left?
Absolutely not for a moment.
Is there anything about the country that you miss?
Well, my memories of that as a child, and those memories were great memories. I had great friends, just a great community to live in. I was very active, played a lot of sports, and that lifestyle lent itself to that. So that part, I miss the camaraderie and the friendships which I've still maintained. Still, my closest friend lives here in Dallas. Went to high school together. Another one lives in Chicago, Toronto, all over the world. But so that part I miss, the camaraderie and the opportunity to sort of develop those friendships over time. But I think we've, I wouldn't say replaced, but developed new friendships. Yeah.
How easy was it for you to integrate into the community here in Dallas?
It was not easy. The Dallas Jewish community at that point in time, 1979, was a relatively small community. It was quite insular. And not overly welcoming of people new to the community. So it took a while to get involved. I did a couple of things which I think helped. My involvement with the Federation helped because I met people in a social setting, so I met people there. And I think the single biggest contributor to my integration to the Jewish community was the fact that I played softball in the Temple Shalom softball league for 10 years. Met an awful lot of people. So that sort of gave me the common ground. Okay. They didn't talk soccer or rugby and cricket, and I couldn't talk baseball or basketball or football at that point in time. As a form of reference. I wasn't part of BBYO or any of those institutions, so I had to find common ground. Once I did that, it was much easier.
Are you currently involved in any community work or any community organizations?
Well, I was a past president of Solomon Schechter Levine Academy. I was on the executive committee and the board of Yavna. I'm not currently serving in those things. I was a member of APAC. I was a part of the executive committee and the board of our synagogue. And not currently affiliated, so I was looking for new challenges, really. So I ran out of steam with those institutions. I still serve as the audit committee chair for Levine Academy, and I'm still on the board of Yavna.
Were there any particular traditions that were important to you in South Africa that you brought with you here to the United States?
I think the one thing that I would say we did bring with us is we had a tradition in our family, even though we were not religious or particularly observant, is Friday night was family night. So we didn't go out on Friday nights. My brothers, after they were married, they came for dinner to our house, to my parents' house every Friday night. And we essentially continued that tradition. Okay. So we had Friday night Shabbat dinner at home or at friends' house. We did not go out on Friday nights. We did not go to the movies or out for dinner, which was with the kids and their friends when they were younger, and then with the kids when we were older. So I think that's a tradition which I don't know if it's definitely not uniquely South African, but I think it's unique in the sense that it was sort of a secular Shabbat that we sort of continued. And I think it's created very strong Jewish identities for my kids.
Since this interview is meant to be a legacy, not just for the community, but for your children, what else would you like your children to know about your past, about your history, and about what you'd like to leave for them going forward?
That's an interesting question. I mean, they know a lot already because we talk a lot about it. They have been fascinated and want to know more about our family. When I talk about my family, I talk about my father's family more than my mother's, because he had a big family. He was a huge family man, and a lot of his life centered around family. So my kids learnt about his family through him. Talked a lot about them. So they have a great sense of that. My mother was very guarded about her past for understandable reasons. She had a lot of mishaps and misfortune in her early life. She struggled with the consequences of some of that. So she was nowhere near as communicative. So we know little or nothing about my mother's family or her history. She never talked at all about her experiences in Germany. She kind of blocked that out of her mind. So I think my kids try to get her to talk about that, but she was very reluctant to do that. So they have a great sense of my father's family. It was very warm, all-encompassing family. He lived for his family.
Is there a special message you'd like to give them?
To my kids? About, I think if they could embrace some of my father was a very vibrant man who lived until his 90s. And he had this vigor and this will to live. He jumped out of bed in the morning and just wanted to live. And he worked into his 80s and read the newspapers and knew what was going on and drove a car and went to a computer class in his 80s. if they could embody that spirit, that will to live, that drive, that community involvement, that's what I want them to live with.
Thank you very much, Allan. It's been
Sure.
a pleasure meeting you, interviewing you, spending the morning with you. And we wish you all the best.
Thank you.